Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Are we on?
We are on. Hey, Brett, how are you? How's life in the Amron family?
Life is good. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
It's good to see you.
Everyone's back at school from break, and so
spread across the United States.
Exactly. Our house was empty, except my nephew ran the Miami Marathon this weekend.
Congratulations.
Congrats to Drew, and the whole family came in to watch that, so we had a full house again. It's always fun. I love having a full house.
Yeah. Our house is not quite empty, but almost.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about our episode today.
We're excited about every episode, but I think it goes to another level today.
That is true. It's next level because we have a special guest back. So our guest from episode 160, which if you haven't listened to it, I encourage you to hit pause right now, go back to our episode list and go to episode 160, which is called Stories from a Legal Legend, and listen to that, and then come back and listen to this one right after you're done. Don't listen to something else in between either. Just listen to that one, then come right here because we have no one other than Bob Josefsberg back on the show today. Excited to have you.
Welcome back, Bob.
Great to be here.
Welcome. We had so much fun. First of all, I think your prior episode was maybe our longest or one of the longest episodes that we've had. And it was so much fun that, we almost immediately started working on scheduling a follow-up episode. So we're glad to have you. And I don't know about you, Brett, but my thought was we kind of just dove right in the last one. And we started off by talking about luck. You ascribed much of your success to luck, which we pushed back a little bit on, but I'm more curious about rolling back the clock a little. And
we're going to do a prequel.
Yeah, a prequel. That's a great idea.
That's right.
I like it.
There you go.
Tell us, how you ended up as a lawyer. Let's
go back. How'd you end up in law school?
Where were you born? Why, where'd you go to school, and why'd you go to law school?
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
In a neighborhood where you were safe and can go outside and play in the street. You were safe for a 10-block radius and probably past that. The Italian and Jewish mothers had an informant system much better than any federal agency has.
That's
By the time I would get home from school, my mother knew everything I had done wrong. I had been at this house and I'd put my feet up on the couch. Everyone knew everything. If I had gone into the grocery store to try to buy beer, which I did not do, but if I'd gone in, the owner would have said to me, "Bobby, you're 16. What are you doing? I'll lose my license. I'll call your mother if you come back in here again."
That's right.
Everyone knew everyone. And when they say it takes a village, it was a village. And everyone knew each other. Everyone was very nice to each other. And it was a great place to grow up.
And you went to public school, presumably, throughout?
I went to a public school, my public school, Lafayette High School, where Sandy Koufax went.
Right.
And he was a very good guy. And he was a basketball player. Never played baseball. He got a basketball scholarship. And during the off season, he played in the baseball team. Played first base at Cincinnati, where he had a scholarship. And they struck out someone, and they threw the ball around the infield. And he threw it from first base home. And the coach said, "Let me see that again." That's how it started.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you were a basketball player too, right? You weren't
No.
you? Were you?
I wasn't any good.
Oh, okay.
I used to always say I'm off today. And I found out I'm not off, I'm just not good. And also when I graduated high school, I was 2 years younger than most of them, and I was 5'10".
Why is that? Why were you 2 years younger?
Because some teachers didn't like me, so they moved me up. Actually, the biggest thing was something called the SP system, where when people skip and they go away for the summer and they come back with all new people who are a year older than them and don't like the new smart kid. This was a program where 90 kids in Setlow Junior High School did the 7th, 8th, and 9th grades in 2 years. And you did it with 89 other people.
And back then, junior high school or middle school was 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Right. And we did it then.
Which I support still.
With all these other people. We won all the sports events against 7th graders. And then we did fairly decently against the guys who were a year older than us. A very successful group of 90. And they did well in high school. And instead of just skipping, it was done over a 2-year period.
It was a whole program, huh?
It was wonderful. And then my high school, Lafayette, has since been closed because it had the lowest graduation rate and the highest crime rate of any school in the city. And it was a wonderful bunch of people. And to the extent that I'm successful as a trial lawyer dealing with jurors, the jurors are just like my friends from Lafayette High School.
Right.
I still do a Zoom once a month with 3 friends from high school.
Right. Yeah, we touched on that in the last episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And
I love that.
And they're wonderful. And I learned to speak to jurors at Lafayette High School because I didn't just tolerate people whose IQs were much lower than mine. I liked them. They're very nice people. You know, you don't have to be smart to be a good friend.
I'm proof of that. I'm friends with Brett, so I didn't have to be smart to be his friend.
Yeah. We got you. So I had good education there, and I was well taken care of because in my life, I was always up through high school. I was known as Sheila's brother, and my sister Sheila was magnificent. And all the teachers gave me every break because they loved Sheila. And I also got other breaks because they loved my mother from PTA, and they loved my Aunt Charlotte, who was a teacher in different schools. But when I was in 3rd and 4th grade, I guess the nicest word for it, I was hyperactive and troublesome. And in ordinary circumstances, a teacher would just put me in the corner with a dunce cap. But instead, because they liked my mother and sister and aunt, they developed a program for me. One, I was elected captain of the monitors, and I did the traffic outside the school. I wore a white badge and told cars where to go. And then they made a visual aid squad. And I walked around the school, took orders from every teacher as to what films or pictures they wanted. When it came in, I went and showed it. And at any time I was bored in class, I was told to go out and oil the projectors. I can take apart and put together any projector that's at least 70 years old.
So I mean, very smart, right? I mean, and there are a lot of kids today that have ADHD and other, other issues, and, maybe they have different programs for them and medicines, I suppose. But what a great way to redirect.
They kept me busy.
Yeah.
Right? So they redirected you and they kept you busy.
When I was in class and the teacher would say CAT, C-A-T, I got it. When she'd repeat it the second and third time,
you're bored.
I was off the wall.
Right. Yeah. Which, by the way, understandably so for a kid that age, right?
Yeah, I was young and smart and had various deficiencies.
Yeah.
And they just kept me so busy that now I never learned how to spell. And because I knew I couldn't spell, I didn't have good penmanship, and I took great care of that because I didn't know when to put I-E or E-I. And the way I scribbled it, no one could tell I was wrong. So
That's
my
smart.
penmanship is terrible.
That's good.
And my spelling is horrible.
Right.
But I'm good with old projectors.
So in general, you were a pretty good student. I mean,
well, yeah, I was a good
setting
student.
aside these things, and then you went to college, because
that's how I got into the SP.
Oh, that
system.
program, right?
Yeah, because they considered I was kind of gifted back then, and from college.
But was college even a certainty? Because back in those days, it wasn't as common.
For my parents, it was.
Yeah, you were going to college.
I was going to college.
Okay.
my sister had gone, and I went and I applied. I got into Dartmouth and Harvard, and I went and visited both. And I visited Harvard on a weekend of exams. And everyone was very serious, and they told me how old, important, and it's the finest college in the world. And at Dartmouth, they were just all running around having fun. And I was more running around having fun.
So you went to Dartmouth, right? Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, well, the other part was I was offered a Harvard scholarship. And my father, who had had 2 jobs in high school, college, and law school, while he was every other week giving a pint of blood for his sister who had leukemia, he saw some guys riding around in cars who were on scholarship. And he just thought it was terribly unfair. So he told me I could not accept any scholarships. He said, I've worked my ass off so I can pay for it so that other people who need the money can use it.
You said your dad was a lawyer. You went to law school? No.
Oh, yeah, my dad's
was a lawyer. Yeah.
My dad was a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And in high school, he asked me what I wanted to do. And I was sure I was going to be pressured to be a lawyer. And I told him I'd like to be an engineer. And he said, that's great. It's a wonderful occupation, and you're really good in your math. I think you'll have a fine time with that. And I went upstairs to bed, and I was very upset.
You thought there was going to be a debate?
Damn it, he's not going to make me I'll teach him. I'm going to become a lawyer. And that's when I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, when I was told I didn't have to be.
Did you ever have a conversation with him later? I wonder if that was his sort of reverse psychology. He knew that would work.
We never discussed it.
That's funny. That's great.
But I don't know if it was reverse psychology or sincere.
Right. Either way, it worked.
He was wonderful, but he didn't leave a lot of oxygen in the room. And while I was known as Sheila's brother in school, when I went and clerked for him 3 summers, no one knew my name. I was called Irving's son.
What type of law did he practice?
Negligence, plaintiff's lawyer.
So he was a litigator Brooklyn. As well.
He was a litigator.
Mm-hmm. So that was that your first taste of seeing litigation up front and up close?
And this is when did you work with him? Was this while you were in law school or before law school?
Did it in college.
In college, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
so you knew you were going to law school at this point when you were in college.
I knew I wanted to, yeah.
Right.
And I got very lucky. I got into law school, and I was somewhat bored in law school.
Where'd you go to law school?
I went to Yale.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
you heard of it?
Everything
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything was Blackacre, Whiteacre, Richard Roe, and Richard Doe, and everything was hypothetical. And I was bored, and I was also either I wasn't motivated or I was lazy. I couldn't work much. I went to classes, but I didn't study hard.
Right.
And after my first summer of law school, I got married and had a honeymoon, and then went back and worked for a professor on his book, doing some proofreading. The second summer, I went to California, where I had 2 jobs that I mentioned before we got on. Mm-hmm. And I found out with real people and real cases, I loved it. I worked 2 jobs, each of them 30 hours a week, which shocked everyone, including myself.
2 jobs, each 30 hours a week.
Yes.
Are you okay talking about what those jobs were?
The U.S. Attorney's Office.
Yeah. Okay.
And a gentleman named Stanley Anderson, who was a tax lawyer. And I loved doing both of them. They're real cases, real people. There was one big case that I loved, of a White Slave Act case, where someone was bringing girls from Los Angeles to the famous ranch. It's called the Garlic Ranch or whatever in Nevada. And it was interstate transportation for immoral purposes. And it was a great case. And I loved it.
Was that at the U.S. Attorney's Office?
Yes.
Okay.
I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Right.
No, I was saying school didn't attract you, but the summer position really secured
real
your interest.
People, real cases,
Right.
real problems. I loved it. And I think I probably would have finished law school after that, but this made it definite. And I did much better grade-wise.
After
the
summer. So it really secured your interest in doing this.
Yes.
Huh.
So had it not been for an internship or working over a summer, you either may not have finished law school, or you would, and maybe you would have gone into something else.
Yeah, and also we had a major in law school, and mine was estate planning. And for the first job I got in Miami, I did 1 or 2 estate plans, and I found it very boring.
Yeah.
And an associate at the firm asked me to try a case with him. And I had done stuff with trial in law school. There's a group called the Barristers Union. And while moot court was much more popular, I loved Barristers Union, was an officer, and enjoyed that. And then things were very different here in Miami. I don't know if I mentioned it, but we were 10 people in the U.S. Attorney's Office in 1963.
So this is after law school.
Was after being out for
you
7 months.
Right. So after you went to work in estate planning, you were starting to say that a guy asked you to try a case with him.
A small firm, Knowles, Prunty, Goodwin, and Rice-Camp.
Okay.
And
that's Judge Rice-Camp?
Yes.
Okay.
Today, if you want to become a trial lawyer, you apply to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they ask you, what's your trial experience? You say, no, I want to get the trial experience here. They said, no, you need 2 years of trial experience before we'll hire you. And it's very competitive. Well, while there are disadvantages in being 86, and I have metal knees, metal hip, all sorts of stuff, when I grew up, I got into a college that I couldn't get into today. I got into a law school that I couldn't get into today. And I got a job that I couldn't get into today.
Right. Yeah.
The U.S. attorney called me and asked me to come over.
Wow.
And I was the youngest assistant U.S. attorney in the country at that time.
Really? So you went to work in an office and it was 10 lawyers?
10 of us. The U.S. attorney was a gentleman named William A. Meadows. He was also the lay leader of the Methodist Church. And aside from my father, he was the largest mentor that I had. He taught me not just as a lawyer, but as a husband, a father, and a citizen. He was a magnificent person, and although he's gone, I hold a lunch for him every year for all the people that work with him, including 2 federal judges, and we all worship him. Nicest guy in the world.
What was it like back then, if you can sort of describe it to us, working at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami when there's 10 lawyers? That's it. Like compared to what you see today and this behemoth that is just the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Miami.
Well, it's the same as the traffic.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There wasn't much then. I was in the criminal division, and I knew I'd be leaving there someday because I had my first 2 children while I was there, and we were getting ready to deliver the 3rd, and I couldn't afford to stay there. The income wasn't such, and Meadows offered to try to get me a special raise, and I told him it still wouldn't be good enough. And instead, for another $3,000 a year, I went to a private firm. But it was wonderful. There were 3 judges, and the practice of law was such that everyone knew each other. If you broke your word to one person, they told everyone else. So it was a close-knit group, both the public defenders, private defense lawyers, and the prosecutors. And we all worked together. There wasn't any ugly competition to become a partner.
And everyone knew, the judges too, right? Like because it was such a small community, I feel like the judges would get to, if they didn't know you already, they would get to know you pretty quickly.
Oh, they knew us real well.
Right.
They knew us real well. Judge Choate once reamed me at a hearing. Just cut me up. And that afternoon, he sent his secretary over to tell me that he wanted to meet with me. And I figured he was going to yell at me some more. I went over there, and he said, "Did I embarrass you today?" I said, "Yes, Your Honor, you did." He said, "Good." And that was the purpose of what I did, because I wanted to let you know how wrong it was what you did. And the reason I cared about it was we judges have decided that you have the potential of becoming a very good lawyer, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to yell at you a lot in order to teach you how to do things right.
Right.
And I didn't know whether to laugh or cry when I walked out of there. But they knew us very well.
Yeah.
And one of the most touching things was Judge Dyer. My office was next to him. And he was the finest judge and finest person. And once a year, he'd come into my office and talk with me. And he never said it, but the difference between being a judge and a young AUSA is such that you can't be friends. You shouldn't be friends with the people who appear in front of you all the time. And he was so nice that one day a year, calling me Bob, and being friendly, and essentially explaining, although he never said it, the other 364 years, you're Assistant U.S. Attorney Josefsberg, and that'll be our relationship.
That's great.
He was just a magnificent person who the last 5 years of her life was always wheeling his wife around in a wheelchair, and he was a role model as a human being.
Yeah.
The reason he went on the 11th Circuit, 5th Circuit then, was he couldn't stand sentencing.
Oh, yeah. So he wanted to be an appellate. He'd rather be an appellate judge. Wow.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, can't be an easy job, sentencing
To
people.
someone who's really sensitive, it's impossible.
I would love to back up to, you mentioned that William Meadows was something of a mentor for you, and we've talked about in the prior episode as well, the mentors in your life. So I'm curious about mentors, because we have a lot of younger listeners. How did you walk in someone's office and say, "Will you mentor me?" Or how did you obtain these mentors
That's interesting.
through your life?
One of the people I mentored did do that. After a seminar at the University of Miami, he laid back and then spoke to me and said, "I want you to be my mentor." But at any rate,
and what was your response to that, by the way?
It was yes, and I'm still in touch with him regularly.
Okay.
And so is my wife.
So just asking was enough.
Oh, yes. Yeah, anyone that asks that, I would do. Well, let's not go into my mentoring.
Right.
Let's go into my being mentored.
We're going to come back to your mentoring.
Well, I started off with William Meadows, and he was a wonderful influence. And before I had gone to my first firm, I had interviewed in a few places, one of them being Nichols, Gaither, Beckham, Colson, Spence, Hicks, and Spence. Spence and Hicks.
It's a mouthful.
They have catchy names.
I didn't go there because they mentioned, Bill Colson mentioned, that it'd be a real pleasure to hire me because they thought so much of my father. And that killed it. I wanted to do something on my own.
Right, yeah.
And Bill Colson, for some reason, liked me. And he's the one who got Bill Meadows to hire me.
Ah, okay.
And when I left there on these special, I eventually worked at Nichols, Gaither, Beckham, Colson, Spence, and Hicks for Colson. And Colson was a great mentor. And I was very lucky. I mean, people like Chesterfield Smith,
who I also worked with. Yeah. Amazing.
He was just so nice, so kind, so helpful. And Chester Bedell, when I was a prosecutor, I tried some cases against him. And he was something else. Just an unusual human being. And after I left the office, he sent 3 or 4 cases to me, and I tried them with him. And just being around him or being around certain other people was mentoring, just, the way they treated people. And I was very lucky in the mentors I had.
Well, I think, I don't disagree. We touched on this idea of luck on the last episode, and I think I'm sure you were to some degree lucky, but it sounds to us like you really seized these opportunities, because you may have never used the word mentor with Meadows or any of these guys we're talking about, but it sounds, my impression is that you were very observant, and just by merely being around these leaders, you learned. You were just learning, and it sounds like you were soaking up as much as you could from every aspect of them.
I did everything to be around them and to learn from them.
Right.
I sucked up as much as I could.
Right.
And I was always there, doing whatever I could for them, and ingratiating myself to them, and watching them and learning from them. And it carried on for a long time. I still remember, God, it's got to be 55 years ago, going to a Florida bar convention at the Diplomat, and my folks lived then in Hallandale, and my wife and I and our oldest daughter were there then, and I took my granddaughter, who's now a lawyer, my daughter, who's now a lawyer, an assistant state attorney. I took her with me to the bar, and I told her, you're going to meet people. And when you meet them, I'm going to say, hi, this is my daughter, Amy. And then I want you to say, hello, Mr. Bedell, nice to meet you. And of course, while walking over there, the first person we see is Chester Bedell. And she was already scripted, and it was wonderful. And he was just so nice to her. And years thereafter, he asked about her when I was with him. And just, it was luck that I was near to those people. But you're right, I did everything to get as close to them as possible.
You put yourself in those positions.
Well, and I think each of these people, by the way, going back to, it sounds like grade school, people see something in you to want to put you in those positions, to want to, get you into the SP program, or to redirect your energy when you were younger, to ensure that maybe you're going to do better, right? To want to mentor you, to call with or send you cases, to, you know what I mean? That people see something in you that they wanted to help.
But in grade school, I'm not sure that they saw so much in me.
To help themselves.
And my sister, my mother, and my aunt.
Yeah.
And that's why there was so
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair.
So there was some luck. A little bit of luck, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of luck. But yeah, I think it's, in terms of the lesson to learn here is that, that we have this idea, we talk about this idea of mentorship. And so sometimes mentorship is not a formal mentor. You mentioned a young man who asked you to be a mentor, but we don't always ask people to be their mentors, and they're still mentoring us. You can learn from anyone.
One of the things I've done I've been practicing now 63 years. In the last 40 years, I have one way or another mentored over 100 young people. And one of the big things I've done is when someone calls me themselves, or has a friend call me, or a relative, says my son in California is practicing there, wants to come back and be here with his family. Can you help him get a job? I get in touch with a young person, and if they're responsible, they don't want to give up their job, sell their home, etc. They say, I've got to have a job before I come. I said, no, you sell your home, get ready. While you're looking for a job, I'll give you a job in my office as a law clerk. You'll earn a decent salary. No one wants to hire someone who's unemployed. But instead, they'll answer the phone that it's Pearson and Josefsberg, or that it's Potter's Dorset, both of which are prestigious names. You'll be doing good work, you'll make money, you'll have your self-respect. Now, 50% of those got jobs before they came. But they meanwhile have packed up and gotten it moving. The other 50%, I had stay with me until they got their job. And they were wonderful. Some of the best law clerks, better than associates, were people who I found like that.
What's inside you that it compels you to want to help people like that?
It's because of all the help I got. I'm in a very good position today, and I'm there because of Chester Bedell, Chesterfield Smith, Bill Colson, Bill Meadows, David Dyer, Judge Fulton. These people really helped me. Did I tell you the story about Fulton and what he did after I tried a big case?
Is that the one where he said,
maybe someday you'll get your priorities right?
About your family.
I mean,
you did a great job, got a great result, and then just crapped all over you.
All over me because I told him with pride.
Yeah.
When he asked about my family,
that you hadn't seen him, right?
I hadn't seen him in 2 weeks because I worked so hard on this case.
Yeah.
And then he just shook his head.
Yeah. I think some of these, mentors, teachers, guides are really for you pointing out blind spots, like telling you things that maybe it's hard to see. It's always, I always say it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame, but the thing about your family, it probably wouldn't have even occurred to you at that point, and then somebody else shines a light on that, on it for you. And
I was so intent upon being a big deal that I was being a rotten father.
Yeah.
And you get mixed up about all those things, and it takes a mentor or a friend or someone who cares to point these things out to you.
Right.
And I've had a ton of them who have kept me, tried to keep me on the straight and narrow.
But I think a good mentor will also highlight positives, right? To give you more confidence to say, no, you're actually really good at this. You're good at, So I think the mentor will do both, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But also somebody who you respect enough who can give you criticism without you just, a lot of people when they get criticism, constructive feedback, whatever you want to call it, many become defensive. Yeah. And they immediately start, making excuses, but you sounded like you were open, you were getting it from a place of love, respect, whatever.
What you were asking about in the very beginning, the difference between 63 years ago and now, is back then there was a closer relationship and people cared about you.
Yeah.
And even your opponents. Some of my opponents became my best friends.
You just knew everyone, right? And
you did know everyone.
Yeah.
Is this a function of the size? I mean, is it pure size because it was a smaller community?
Somewhat. With the largeness, you go into court and you're abusive to your opponent or unkind to the judge, and you figure you'll never see them again.
Well, and part of it is also the fact that it's much easier today to go to court in another jurisdiction on a particular case. You parachute in, you handle the case, and then you're out. And I feel like a lot of lawyers just, if you don't know them, you've never interacted with them, they feel a little more emboldened, like, well, I'll just deal with them, and then I'll never see them again. It won't matter.
Yeah, then the great story is, I don't know if I told it last time, about what Pete Fay used to do.
No, I don't know that.
He hated discovery motions and arguments.
Insert name of any judge.
Yeah.
But what he did was when he came in and said, look, I'm not going to hear your motion about the interrogatories and the production. I am ordering both of you to go out and have lunch together. Not discuss the case, but discuss your lives.
Yeah.
Find out that you go to the same church, that your next door neighbor is his uncle, and you'll find a great deal of commonality. And if after that lunch you can't resolve your discovery issues, come back here and I'll make rulings. No one ever came back. Once you started talking and realized this isn't just an opposing counsel, he's a human being.
Right.
He's got a family like I do, and his kids are in the same league. And we got a common friend. I don't want my next door neighbor to to hear that I'm a jerk because of the way I treated him. And people don't know each other today.
Yeah.
And back then, people like P. Fay said, get to know each other.
Right. This
means a lot.
This is one of the challenges of all the virtual stuff we do now with virtual court hearings or virtual mediations, that you don't get to know the opposing counsel. You know, when we're going to court, physical court, we are sitting there. We're sitting there with our opposing counsel. We talk. We converse. We talk about the case. We talk about other stuff. We watch other hearings. We see other lawyers. Now you're virtual. You just I'm in my room and we're both on mute, and there's just no camaraderie or interaction.
Aside from what you're doing in court, we were required at the Nichols firm after the hearing to go to Benji's and have coffee with our opponent.
I like that.
We were told you must do that.
I like that.
And it was made whole different relationships.
I think it's the remote aspect, but I also think it's time pressures. I think people feel, I gotta get this done and move on. I can't spend time either having coffee with my opponent or just, by the way, because you could spend time on Zoom or on a phone, like talking to people.
Right.
You could. But people, today it's like, well, I got to bill my time or I got to get through this and I got to move on to the next. And it's just not a lot of, the feeling of not a lot of free time availability.
Somewhat it, but there's also just a different attitude about relationships.
Yes, agreed.
And I've seen a granddaughter and two of her friends at lunch with us, and they're not talking to each other.
They're on the phones.
They're all on their cell phones.
Yeah, no, I know.
Sending emails.
Drives me nuts when we go to dinner as a family and I look over at another table and like everybody at that table is staring at their phones, not talking to each other. And it just drives me nuts.
My friends, including Nick Massington, when we have dinner, we're required to put our cell phones in the center.
Yeah.
We can answer them.
Yeah.
You need it. You need that.
You need time. You need time to interact with other human beings. Listen, we're talking about the practice of law, but this is probably an issue for society as a whole, right?
Very much so.
Right.
For sure.
People are not as friendly as they used to be.
No.
But when I drive down Red Road and
drive on any road in Miami,
and there's a woman over on the right side with 3 kids in her car who just wants to cut through and put them in school. Yeah. And no one stops. You won't lose your space.
It's not going to take, right? It's not going to take any time. It's not going to, right?
Just,
yeah. I mean,
common courtesy.
Some guy cut me off the other day and gave me the finger. Cut me off and then, flew the bird out the window.
Yeah.
People are just on edge.
Yeah. I think we need to.
Law school roommate, who would also be my bunkmate in camp when we were 13, I wrote a book, and one of the chapters in it was a story about an experiment they had where there were 40 people who were going to go out for interviews. And 20 of them, this is in New York City, 20 of them were told, you're going to be interviewed in a building that's 4 blocks away, and that's 15 minutes from now, go ahead. And those people went out. They didn't notice someone lying in the gutter. They didn't notice a kid who was lost. They didn't see a blind man who was trying to cross the street. And their attitude, I got to get to that interview. The next group, they gave 40 minutes notice. And those people stopped and spoke to the child who was lost. Mm-hmm. Helped the blind person across the street.
Right.
Did a lot of different things. Part of the problem is we're so important that we're in such a rush that it's not just a matter of not smelling the flowers. We don't notice that someone next to us is bleeding.
Right. And needing help.
And we don't care for each other as much.
Yeah.
So
that's terrible.
Yeah. If I was a young law student and I was sitting in front of you and you had a couple minutes, I know we're talking about time pressures, but you had a couple minutes, what advice would you give me as a young law student today, looking to you as a mentor, somebody who obviously has achieved great things, so has seen a lot?
Well, I know that you know all about hard work and research, etc. I would say make good friends. And I don't know if I mentioned it last time, but my partner, Aaron Potthurst, I first met when we were opposing counsel. His family was in the Catskills. My family had a summer home in Mahopac, New York. And I had to take a deposition of his client in the Catskills. And we worked it out so we would take the deposition on a Monday. And both of us could fly up on Friday with our kids and wives and see our families and then take the deposition. Today, people don't call each other to work out stuff like that. Your client says to you, set my wife's deposition on Wednesday. That's when she has her canasta game. And if a lawyer is dumb enough, he says, yeah, I'll do that. Massington, same thing. I was against him in a case. And some of my best friends are people I tried cases against. And the funny part of it, I don't want to sound like an opportunist, but about 30% of my caseload during my career has come from opposing counsel or opposing parties.
Well, you're not an opportunist.
I think it's
you're an opportunist. You're good at what you do, and you treat people well.
And it's just
and with respect.
So much nicer. You know, one of the reasons I'm still practicing at this ridiculous age is everyone treats me nice. And it's because I treat them nice.
Yeah, you get out. You get back what you put out there.
Right. If you want to be a son of a bitch, everyone does it right back to you.
Yep.
I don't know if I gave this example, but I coached all of my kids in their baseball and softball.
Yeah,
and I
did.
tell you about
Yeah.
Every judge, every opposing counsel.
Of course.
Says, we'll let you go to the practice. We'll break early.
Right.
Simple.
Yeah. I think, I think you're right. I think we're all right here that some of it is we're so disconnected. Some of it is we have so much time pressure, but we're all human. We're all fighting the same fight. It just happens that the scenario in which most of us meet, at least lawyers, we meet where our clients are adverse, but we don't have to be adverse. Our clients are the ones in a fight here, not us. We don't have to be fighting. We can we can do this job and still be civil.
Yeah, some lawyers throw fat on the fire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, a lot of them.
Trying to put out the fire.
Yeah,
a lot of them do. Yeah. A lot of them do.
And I've learned for very selfish reasons that when you're being nice to people, they return the favor.
Yeah.
And it makes life so much nicer when everyone's being nice to each other.
Agreed. And it's kind of easier. I think it's in general, it's easier to be nice than
it's
it
more
is to
pleasant.
It's
right?
pleasant, that's for sure.
It's more pleasant to be nice and to receive niceties in return than it is to just go to battle and argue. And look, I've done it over the years.
Yeah,
We've all done it.
Right.
But it's much nicer.
And there are some opponents you have to battle with.
Yeah, 100, yeah.
And when I speak to young lawyers, and I tell the group that my generation is much better than theirs. I explain it's not that we were better, but those of us who were mean, nasty, and fighting all the time, they've either retired, have heart attacks, or been disbarred. And so the few of us that are left, we're nice guys.
The nice guys survived.
We stayed longer, and we lived longer.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot more fun that way.
That makes sense to me.
I still remember during a case, 8 or 9 month case, in front of Chief Federal Judge Ned Davis, that while they were playing tapes during the trial, I would go in the back of the courtroom with Assistant U.S. Attorney Jane Moskowitz.
Sure.
And we would edit my daughter's law school applications. Because she was in Israel trying to make the world better.
Nice.
And she'd send me drafts of her applications.
That's funny.
And Jane would help me with them.
That's great. It takes a village, like you said.
And then we...
bringing it full circle. I like that. Yeah, well done.
When that daughter got married and had her first daughter, the name that was selected for the daughter was the name of Jane's daughter, Ariella.
Oh, nice.
And you just...
Yeah.
develop relationships like that. It's so much nicer.
Yeah. So I think in terms of your advice to the young law student was make friends, but I think the advice maybe for the lawyers is make friends with your opposing counsel. Just make friends everywhere.
With everyone.
Right? Yeah.
And let me tell you something. It's nice to be nice to the bailiff.
Oh, yeah.
Because he can, when you got 3 hearings over in the court and you're running to the different courtrooms, he can cover for you when your case is called.
Sure. I think that goes
bailiffs,
staff,
judicial
paralegals,
assistants, like everybody.
Everywhere you go.
Just come on.
And I think you were saying that about when you were talking about the mentors and observing William Meadows and the others is how they treated other people, not just their opposing counsel, but probably the waiter at the restaurant or whoever, everyone, the person in in line at security.
When I did when I was at the ABA Standing Committee on the Judiciary, I was doing a background on the judges. I interviewed someone who since became the chief judge of the 11th Circuit. And I went up to his hometown, I went to his office, and we went out to lunch. And on the way out, everyone stopped to say hello to him. The guy who was the porter in front of a hotel said, "Hi, Mr. So." That was better than anything we said in the interview. Everyone liked him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
be likable. Be likable. Be nice. Be kind to others.
Be nice or leave.
Theme. Be nice or leave. Listen, I think it's like you said, much more pleasant as an individual, but it's also advantageous. It's usually to everyone's benefit to just be kind. It doesn't usually cost.
It's not just limited. It's not just limited to lawyers.
No, it's everywhere, every setting.
Yeah,
and that's why I told you before we went on the air, I didn't want to discuss anything about politics.
Yeah, agreed.
Because things are not friendly nowadays.
Nope.
There's 2 extremes, and everyone hates each other.
I think you're right because we're focused on the areas where we disagree. But if we would just focus on where we agree, I think we have more in common with our adversaries than we all are being told.
Of course.
Right. Yeah.
People, it benefits some to fan the flames.
Right.
Right. It's the loudest extremists all the way around.
Yeah. I just realized as you were saying it, one thing that the extremes have in common is that they both hate their opponents.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I once did a study on, the 2 groups. What was a very extreme group? The Black Panthers and the Ku Klux Klan.
Mm.
And as I studied and compared the 2 of them, they were so alike, it was amazing. In the things they did, the way they acted. They were both stood for the exact opposite things and hated each other.
In the same way.
But they operated the same way. Yeah.
But the overwhelming majority of us just want a safe place and, know where our next meal's coming from and a roof over our heads.
And then our kids can walk to
kids can be safe and
our
secure.
Kids are safe
and
a good job and people will be nice to each other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good education.
And a good podcast. This was
another
great one, Bob. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this. We learned so much from you.
Well, I'm really holding back for the 3rd one.
All right, fine.
I've got some real juicy stuff.
Don't threaten us. We'll bring you back. We're going to keep
juicy stuff.
Back. Okay. We're going to make you a host at some point. You can take my job.
No.
It'll be no,
I'm not.
The practice with Brett and Bob. Anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review, hit the subscribe button, and share the show with your friends and family. And we will see you next time.
Thank again,
you so
Bob.
much, Bob.
We appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
Nelson.
You.
Thank you, Brett.
Nelson, Jeff, thank you.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit fastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @FastAmron.